Hello, and welcome to the Consider Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Eric King, and along with my co-host, Mino Pachan, we're here to talk about all things mental health. Let's get into it.
Hello, everybody. I'm just playing, man. That's Mino, man. We're missing him today. I'm your host, Eric King. I'm going to be holding it down, hosting duty solo today. My co-host, Mino Pachan, that usually joins me in the first voice that you hear. You know, as people know, he's going through some kidney failure, medical issues. And so, he's in the hospital right now dealing with that. So we're going to hold it down for him. Y'all keep him in your prayers. He's doing well. Just spoke to him yesterday. But luckily, I don't have to do it by myself. We have a great returning guest today. Mr. James Geri, who was on a previous episode of ours and did such a great job. We decided to bring him back. So back by popular demand, Mr. James Geri. How you doing, James?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you very much for having me back.
No problem, man. Thank you all. Thank you so much for coming. Like I said, you kind of give us the street cred. We bring the professionals on, the pros that are invested in this mental health game. Y'all make it more than just two guys talking in the wind here. So we appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. And yes, you do, man. And speaking of doing your best, I know last time we spoke again, you were, coming up on your end of your schooling to become, a licensed therapist and things like that. And I know you were kind of doing, getting your hours in, your clinicals and stuff like that. So yeah, catch us up to where you're at now.
Oh, okay. So there's several things I got to do to get licensed. One of them is accrue 3,000 hours of various types of therapy and administrative and note writing and client interactions and all sorts of stuff. And so
fun stuff.
Yeah. So I finished that. I got to take putting together the package and submit it, and then I'll wait a little while and then start getting ready to challenge the licensure test. So
all right, man. Right there, man. You're on the doorstep, but the hard part's over, right?
I might eat my words, but I think the harder part is over. But now, it's about testing from here on out. So
Definitely. Awesome, man. Yeah, because that's a lot of hours, thousands of hours. The clinicals, I think we compared it last time. Like if you're a doctor, you got to get your hours in as your residency at the hospital. So, hey, there's no substitute for that time. And even though it's flying, that's nothing to sneeze at, man. So shout out to you for putting in that work, man.
Thank you very much.
For sure. And again, last time we spoke with you, we're just kind of talking about the journey, what it's like to become a therapist. Your journey that you started off in the military, doing intake and stuff like that. And when you brought up intake, I'm the one that was like, you mean like jail? And you're like, no, man. So that brought us down a whole rabbit hole of hey, the process of people who are getting mental help, who need help, crisis centers and things like that. And so how that experience kind of prompted you to want to, professionally get into the mental health space and be a licensed therapist. And one of the things that was really great was right at the kind of the end of the interview. I don't know how it kind of got brought up, but the idea of, trusting yourself, learning to, retrust yourself. Why don't we trust ourselves came up. And you had some really great insight into that. And it's kind of been on my mind. It was so much so I had to bring you back to bring it up again, because it was that idea of like the one shot idea. Like, people get in their head, hey, I have one shot to make it. I have to, one shot to do this, lose yourself style. If you only have one shot, one opportunity to see, and you get this in your head, and let's say you don't do so well, perform so well, or it doesn't go well, and then you kind of don't trust yourself anymore. And, kind of learn how to retrust that. So that idea you brought up I thought was really cool, man. So we definitely wanted to kind of revisit ourselves and go into, why don't we trust ourselves,
Oh, man. You're asking the tough ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that idea, again, done very well to be romanticized by Eminem and the folks who wrote 3 Mile.
3 Mile, 8 Mile.
8 Mile. That's what I think they lived on.
I
don't know why I thought funny. 3 Mile. I don't know. But it's been a while. I actually saw that movie in theaters. It was
yeah, that's our generation. We're old, man. The whole generation of rappers and battle rappers respond from that stuff.
I think I think there are some people out there that genuinely really, typically through circumstances, usually not of their own doing, are oftentimes pressed into a situation in which they have very limited opportunities. But I gotta believe that, like, it's too hyperbolic to assume that we all only ever get one single opportunity. Um, and they say, luck kind of rests, at the corner of opportunity and preparedness. And I think, I think, sometimes we make mistakes when we're kids, and, and a lot of folks I talk with, they say that, you know, yeah, I knew it was the wrong thing to do, but for some reason I thought maybe it'd be a different outcome, and then I did what I wanted to do, and of course it didn't work, and so now I don't trust myself, and I think that happens not just when we're kids; it happens when we're young adults. It's especially impactful in when we're going through that 18 to 26-year-old development, the sort of the
Mm-hmm.
transition age youth.
Mm-hmm.
We're stepping out on our own. We're getting acclimated to life on our own, or at least life away from home. And we want to see if we can do it ourselves. We want to prove to ourselves, and sometimes to other people that are close to us, that we can do things ourselves. And we don't always make the right choices. And then we start wondering if we can make the right choices.
Mm-hmm. And I think I'm glad you pointed out kind of the age that, that happens at. And again, it can happen at any age, of course, but the 18 to 26, as you said, that transition from, being a teenager to, college years to being an adult, to figure out what you're supposed to be going to be doing for the rest of your life. That's the period of time where you're supposed to have that pressure to, start figuring those things out. And one of the things that um, I've noticed is a lot of people have a lot of regrets of what they chose to do during those years. And I'm talking about not people that were just bums, didn't do anything, but they think they went to school for the wrong thing. I should have chose a different major. Oh man, I got a a BA, but I should have got a BS, or I got an MA. I needed a Master of Science. I can make more money. So I think we kind of, you can start looking at your life with some regrets, and then start really questioning, okay, what was my reasoning behind that? And then forgetting, like, no, your reasoning may have been sound. That's what you really wanted to do. We come from that generation too. Find something you love to do. You'll never work a day in your life. Go after your passion and all that. Those weren't bad motivations. But all of a sudden, as we creep closer to 30, we're looking at our wallets, we're looking at our career projections, we're looking at things, and we can start to just dismiss it, like discount everything that we did before. Oh, that was a mistake. Can't believe I did that. Da, da, da. Not realizing it's like, no, man, you made maybe the best decision at the time with the information and the circumstances you had.
Yeah, that tends to be the case more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes very hard to kind of forgive ourselves for, for making the best decision we could at the time. We look back and we start thinking about it. We're like, well, man, I should have just done this. It's so clear now. It's like, well, hindsight is 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have I think humans in general have a proclivity to create dragons in our mind. And I think a lot of times we'll kind of
Create
just,
dragons. That's like metaphor, like a monster. You create something monstrous
yeah,
that's not really that.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
the mythical creature that sort of can do all the things. It can breathe fire, it can fly, it's big, it's all the things that the ancients would be afraid of, right? And we have a way of sometimes taking some of these problems and turning them into just incredibly, massive dragons in our mind. And then, maybe we start putting ourselves in not opportunities, but in positions where we don't have to make intense life decisions. It's like we found a job that is sort of just comfortable enough, but it pays the bills, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of living, and I don't have to think about what my actual potential is, and like the true options that exist out there. I've talked with folks who will say, they have people in their family that are they're kind of pressuring them, and oh, you could do more, you could do more, and they
Mm-hmm.
respond back like, look, I have a job, I'm paying my own rent, I'm handling my business. And in general, that they're working, and they're struggling to kind of stay afloat and to keep it going. But I think sometimes folks in their life kind of forget that, like, some of those day-to-day challenges, and they start pressuring them. Oh, how come you don't do more? And then, they start getting self-conscious, and it starts this
Mm-hmm.
kind of like reciprocal wheel of self-distrust.
Gotcha. Because like we don't usually say this anymore, but I remember when I was younger, somebody being a loser, the idea of being a loser, they used to have a movie even like somebody's just a loser. And when you describe somebody who's like, working, they're, doing their thing, whatever, maybe not being the best career, not whatever, but they're paying their bills, they're getting by. Nowadays, it's almost people like look at that person like a loser, whereas opposed to the past, like, a loser was somebody that took an unfortunate loss or something in their life.
Yeah.
But we've just changed it to you're not super successful. You could be doing, you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not striving to be ambitious. What, you want to work for somebody? Don't you want to be an entrepreneur and own it? It's just like, whoa. Like,
Yeah. It's like a pathologizing of how come you're not like me? Is
mm,
ultimately that's the question I think that's being asked. Why aren't
mm,
you having the same look on your life the way I do? I
mm.
you know I it's very easy. There's a great speech. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt. It's called "The Man in the Arena," and
Okay,
I
heard of that.
I
Yeah,
I think it popped through on like some Tom Brady documentary. But I
yeah,
heard
yeah.
the
That's what they named it, Man in the Arena, the Tom Brady
okay.
documentary.
Well, this speech is, it's from over 100 years ago, and it's Teddy Roosevelt talking about perspective, and it's like, when you're in the arena and you're facing down the challenge that you're facing you're looking at it eye to eye. But when we're all sitting up in the stands, we all have these wonderful view down to what's happening in the arena, and of course we have great ideas. Of course, we're all the greatest coaches that ever lived, and
Monday morning quarterbacks right there.
oh man, real time Sunday afternoon quarterbacks. Like
Yeah.
why didn't you put
Yeah.
him in? And
Hmm.
and definitely, certainly the Monday morning. But um, the challenges that a person faces look very different when they're the one facing them, and
Hmm.
it can be very invalidating from people around who are sort of trying to. It almost comes across as like a heavy judgment. It's like, why aren't you trying harder? And this person is like,
Hmm.
look, I'm doing the best I can.
Hmm. Wow, that idea of that invalidation of those around you, that's so powerful because it can cause you to go from content, be happy doing what you're doing, think you're on the right track in that, to all of a sudden now it's a problem, just
Right.
that quick.
Totally. Sorry. It reminds me of, it kind of comes to the Maslow thing, the pyramid.
Hierarchies of needs, yeah.
That's the one. It's like you start getting those baser needs met, like safety and your physiological, and so you start like looking around for like love and belonging and esteem, and trying to like figure out which path you want to go. But it's like, boy, 4 steps forward and 3.5 step back when you're making moves that you perceive to be satisfactory, and then you're sort of hearing from other people, or hearing from media is another one,
Hmm.
TV and videos, and with the new generation, a lot of streaming and sort of instant access material,
On
you
demand,
know,
yeah.
on demand. Yeah, you can feel bad about yourself in T-3 seconds if you want.
Wow, that, what, that is interesting. You talk about that because we come from slightly a little different generation where we grew up where it just wasn't on demand. We had to literally, you could tell by what time of the day it was by what show was on. You know,
Oh yeah,
we
10
tell
a.m.
time
Let's
differently,
make a
yeah.
deal.
And if you missed it, you missed it. We kind of had a day structure. Now, you can literally, like you said, on demand your depression, on demand your anxiety, on demand your insecurity if you want to. Um, and that is wow. Hmm.
I think
If
it's
you're a glutton for punishment out there, this is a bad time for you to be around.
that's for sure. I think also too, like if even if you sort of sit back and thought about just adding, take what you're doing, and even if you did have intrinsic feelings of wanting to, do more, if you looked at a spot in your schedule where you could add one more small thing, even if it's only for an hour, in a week, and if you tried it out for a while and it didn't work, and you were still sort of that mindset that I couldn't make it work, and and that starts that reciprocal loop, like, well, you're never going to make it work, and you should
Hmm.
probably stop trying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Safer to keep your Yeah, you see like apathy a lot. Apathy is very much a window to people who have sort of experienced, metaphorical beatdowns, experiences which have taught them that they were not enough in those moments, and they don't. It can be very hard to step back and say, you know what, maybe I was enough, but it wasn't for me.
Mhm.
You know,
I like
yeah.
that. I wasn't enough, but maybe it wasn't for me, because I started to think about some decisions again, particularly you said 18 to 26, some decisions and some associations and groups that I got into for that validation, that I'm doing the right thing, that we're on track. And I don't know if you've ever heard of like I think you've probably heard of it, like an MLM, multi-level marketing group, like
Oh,
thing.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's plenty of different ones. We got to say particular names, but I got involved in one when I was like, I think again, college, like 19, maybe 18. And I remember that was one of the things that about it that attracted me at the time, was that you had all these people validating the activity that you're doing and telling you you're doing a good job. Hey, this is what we're doing, all in the move to success. We're calling this many people. We're contacting this many people. We're driving people, whatever it was, you know. Um, but it was the validation of the group that, hey, this is good. You're doing a good thing. This is what we need to do to be successful. That stuff you were doing all the time, like, you don't have that validation. You're not getting that, that thing I wasn't getting from the other, groups in my life. I think when I went to that group, even if I didn't necessarily understand it, the marketing of it, the, whatever it is, even if it was a bad thing overall, a lot of people can call MLMs, cults, and it can get very cultish, actually, to be real with you. I got kind of close in it, but the main thing was like, you get that validation, but then all of a sudden you're not in that group anymore, or you're not successful in it. Then you start to doubt yourself, like, dang, man, I just couldn't make it work. But when the reality was, looking back on it all these years later, and again, people that I know that have been in it, they'll try to go out in it. Perhaps it was never designed for you to be successful in it.
Mm.
You know?
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
When you think back to that time in your life, or the amount of time that you spent in the MLM environment, what comes up for you?
I think back again, the convention we used to go to, like they would have convention down in Tennessee or whatever, like all these events and stuff you go to. So like I think about the group events, those bus rides going down there, and then like talking to people. And again, I'm a loquacious individual, have a whole podcast, I interview people, I had that in me already. And so one of the main things was to talk to people. And that was some of the people's biggest issue, was doing that. And, for me, I learned a lot about, it wasn't all bad. I did learn a lot about, talking to people, even, strangers and stuff like that. It was really prepared me for sales, which is how I met Mino. We worked at a bank and we were doing sales. That was kind of my introduction into that. And so I really think of it like that. I was like, yeah, those are the years where I was, basically training to be a salesman, and, hanging out and going on trips that just were really for the sake of hanging out. Like there was never any money or any success. None of us really had all this great success at it, but it was like this idea that we are going to, and that you had validation from other people saying, yeah, man, I'm doing the same thing. We're going the same, like, even if the results weren't there, the memories of, man, dang, if I could have just done this, if I could have just done that. But the reality is, when I got to take those rose-colored glasses off, I was like, nah, nobody that I knew actually did well in it.
Well, I really like framing it as great. I mean, that's an extremely positive frame. Yeah. I mean, you on some level, when you think back, you realize that there's definitely sort of a pyramid structure to it.
Yeah, pyramid scheme. That's yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, the way that you're choosing to kind of look at it, and the way that you have integrated, your view on that period in your life is entirely positive. And it's like, I think, like you said, a lot of people can't do it. They feel like they've been taken advantage of almost.
Very much so.
They've lost time, and they know that something was weird, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. Like it's like, and man, I went with a friend. I don't know if this was necessarily multi-level marketing, but it sounded like a real estate presentation, but it was clearly a pyramid scheme. And so I accompanied him and went with him and sat with him, and it was one of those airport Hiltons, in the
Yep, I know. Hey, bro, I already know. That's why I said I didn't have to say no names. I'm just keeping it. This is a very broad thing.
Right, yeah. So and you get into it and you're just immediately bombarded with imagery. And it reminds me of Clockwork Orange when they have the guy in the chair and they're just forcing him to watch all the
Yep.
screens, and
Yeah, got his
then he hit
eyelids pried open. Yeah.
exactly with the drops and everything, right? And the images that you're seeing on these screens are of these properties that are just out of control. Like you thinking about it logistically, these are the types of properties that probably contract with movie companies to film scenes because
You
they're
like it
so
because you've seen that place before. You watched the movie in it.
right. In
Within
fact,
it, probably.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of them were, and
Mm-hmm.
and then the promises are just out of control, and it's everything you wish you would hear, and then there it is. And so just I can't imagine the the dopamine cascade, and the feeling of togetherness, you
Mm-hmm. That feeling of togetherness. That's you hit nail on the head. Yep.
yeah. What you felt that too with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you get that when you said that validation, you're looking from that
Right.
validation from the people around you. Because even if you think you're doing okay, like it's we really are kind of looking for the people around us to say, yeah, you're on the right track. You're doing this, da da da. Da.
Right.
During feelings of uncertainty, we get anxiety. And so that place, like when you're involved in something like that, it's all about basically quelling your anxiety, calming your nerves. Hey man, you're a team, everything's fine. Hey man, just keep hey, go out there selling another one. Hey man, I got rejected too, it's okay. It's a lot of positive affirmations for you to just overcome the rejection thing.
Right.
And so there's a lot of positives you can build from it, but unfortunately, like again, I have more positive outlook because I truly didn't invest as much as a lot of people because I didn't have it to invest it first off. I was
Right. Right.
19 when I first met these people, so I just didn't have it. And at the same time, it was like I truly thought I had other options. I was like, okay, I can try this, and if it doesn't work, I was like, okay, it doesn't work. I was in college when they met me. I was still going to grad school, afterwards. It didn't stop me from doing any other things, but it was just like, oh well, hey man, if I get into this, maybe I won't have to do those other things,
Mm.
you know. And then so as much as positive is overcome, hey man, keep going back out there, keep making the pitch, keep doing it. Well, then all of a sudden at a point when you don't succeed, then all that positive just kind of goes away. Where it's just kind of like, oh, well, you gave up. Oh, you weren't good enough. Oh, I just must not be. And then you take it personally, so that you start to again distrust yourself, perhaps.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have it. And then the next time you hear anything or any good ideas or any groups or whatever, it can make you more gun shy to that. Because, well, last time I got involved with the group, last time I trusted some people,
Yep. Yeah.
that said they had their back. Well, that was only if I was doing good. Once all of a sudden I wasn't going to succeed in it, they didn't have my back anymore.
Right. Yeah.
That stuff goes away when you're not involved in those. When you're not involved in those things, those MLMs. Sometimes the groups are told to cut you off because now you'd be against them or negative. Everybody has to be on the same page, and that's so great when you're on the same page. Yay, that's great. But what happens when you want to flip the page?
Yeah. And you could see, and it not necessarily just pursuant to MLM, but for other career paths that people go to as well. And I talked to some folks who work for they'll work for the city, and you can see in hearing some of the conversations, and this was back in Connecticut. Some of the folks sort of got they got in like
Mm-hmm.
10, 13, 14, 15 years, and there was like starting to think about moving towards maybe managerial or supervisory positions, and then they'd see people that had been there for a couple years just get suddenly moved up, and so like they start to like second guess their own abilities, and start to cry fraud and nepotism and all these things, and they start realizing, well, what have I done? And they start looking at their own accomplishments as they start minimizing their
Mm-hmm.
own accomplishments. It's like, boy, you've put in a lot of labor, for over a decade, and you've beautified the city in a way that it's tangible. It's there. I see it when I go by, and you can take pride in it at a glance. But when you start to see sort of the seedy underbelly of how some of the selections were going, you could look at that and call it wasted time.
Mm-hmm. Easily. And I think that is so dangerous because you start to doubt yourself. Now all of a sudden you think that job that you got, and this is one of the things I heard too, and it kind of rings with me since I was involved technically in, I guess, a pyramid scheme, that your job is a pyramid scheme too. And to a certain degree, I kind of understand that, you know, because it's like, all right, if you're trying to climb the corporate ladder, you're trying to jump through these hoops, but then the people above you, your supervisor, whatever, maybe doing less work or anything like that, they're above you always.
Right.
I've heard people even talk about, in the corporate world, salary, AKA slavery, I was like,
Yeah.
dang, because, they can tell you to do anything. But then all of a sudden when you see people get promoted above you, when you see people, newer, better, maybe, get more validation from that environment, that company, that group than you do, then as you said, you minimize your accomplishments. You start to doubt yourself, instead of going and, creating that new resume, putting all those things you've done, putting it out there on Indeed, Monster, whatever, LinkedIn, instead of putting that stuff on there, you don't even think it's worth, putting on there, blocking you from other opportunities. I'm saying this, I'm trying to be vague, but I have a friend that this specifically happened to. I don't want to put his business out there, but he got really kind of beat down by a job and he started to really kind of doubt himself and his abilities. And then one day he was like, hey man, help me out with my resume. I started to ask him more questions and, get his resume together, boom, boom, boom. And he had actually done a lot. He put that thing on Indeed and within a couple days, he had a job offer and he's working there now. But it all started with this idea, like he really got in this old job. It was like, man, I'm stuck here forever. Dang, I done messed up, man. I'm stuck here. All right, I've invested so much in this time. But that wasn't the truth. We think one of the biggest lies we get told ourselves that this is going to be it forever, especially when it comes to careers, jobs, or whatever, that's probably the least permanent thing nowadays.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. You could see that with your friend. You could see it becomes a total breeding ground for intense emotional responses. Things like anxiety and shame and embarrassment, guilt, for some anger, for some folks fear. They start, the loss of trust in the people around them, and loss of a feeling of security, like a financial security, or at least just security in that they're making choices correctly. And what's interesting too is some of the folks that experience really terrible things, kind of have to go through a bit of a grieving process almost before they can kind of pick it back up again, and maybe get to that point like your friend was like, hey, help me with my resume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, grieving process. Sometimes you got to grieve a dream, I guess. When a dream dies or this idea dies, I'm going to be this here,
Right.
And then it's like, nah, you're actually not. And actually, it's not even you. This isn't even designed for you to be that there.
Right.
And so you mentioned something like a shame. That shame thing, I think, is so powerful. When we can be like ashamed that we didn't succeed, that we didn't make it, that we couldn't, do such and such, or even worse, we get ashamed for the decisions, again, for the people that we've trusted, just that we distrust ourselves. Because a lot of people, again, as you described, don't have as positive an outlook on, MLMs or, things they've gone through where they didn't come on, right into the stick of it. And they say that they got scammed. That word is real big. And particularly during the PPP loan era, people were putting on, oh my goodness, people were putting all their business out there, like, scam, all the fraud that they were doing. People were literally putting the money on Instagram that they were, frauding the government out on and stuff,
Right.
So, this idea of scam and hustling, but nobody likes to get scammed. Nobody likes to get hustled. And one of the things is people don't often talk about it is because you're ashamed of it. When somebody beats you out of some money, or even worse, beats you out of some time that you can't get back. And I think, again, a buddy of mine, man, he recently, went through something where he got scammed through like kind of some crypto stuff. That's been very popular, crypto. I'm not trying to knock it at all. However, there's a lot of unscrupulous people that play the long game with it. And he lost a great amount of money. I'm talking like 20 grand type of money, And I saw what it literally did to him, where this man really, like, that trust, you start to distrust. And it didn't come from an MLM. It wasn't some type of, get rich quick scheme, man. Believe it or not, it came from somebody trying to sell him some solar panels on his house when he bought it. Solar panels on his house when he bought it. He made that decision, and then they end up scamming him. And then, just being on the internet, looking up research and things like that, people reach out to you on the internet. Hey, how you doing? Such and such. Oh, sorry, wrong person. Da, da, da. Then they start talking to you, and boom, you get another conversation. Again, playing that long game with it. And so at the same time, he was getting played, with the crypto thing, thinking he was making good decisions. Also, another good decision he thought he made was getting, solar panels on his house. When in the fine print, the salesman and all of they put all this other stuff in there with all these extra fees and, all this other stuff he's going through. So I really saw my friend, get scammed out of quite a bit of money, and other people trying to take money from him. And it literally, it's almost like he closed off. He put himself into a shell.
Yeah.
He was so ashamed, didn't want to, again, he's a family man, the wife's there. She's, going through this with him. And it really, again, triggered me to the episode previous that you were on, where you said, we learn, how do we learn to retrust ourselves? So,
yeah, man.
Yeah, it was real money. That's why I say anytime we talk about it, I was like, hey, man, you should, be mad, people. You should. Somebody beats you out of some money, somebody scams you, takes advantage of you. This is not the show telling you to just let it go, be all positive like Eric. No. Feel those feelings, my friend.
I mean, it's nothing new too, man. I read a book written by a guy named Oppenheim, not to be confused with Oppenheimer. This guy's name was just Oppenheim. And it was a book on these were, I guess they had uncovered ancient clay tablets from ancient Sumeria, specifically from the city of Ur. And these are dating back to like 1800 to 1701 BCE.
Yeah, I think that's where Abraham was from.
Really?
Abraham, yeah, Ur.
I mean, it was a vibrant trading city, part of the cradle of, really kind of the cradle of civilization, and across the the rivers and the modern day Iraq. And,
you said 1800 BC, right?
Yeah.
Way back, before Christ, people.
Oh yeah. Anyway, it was excuse me, it might have been 18th century, so it was in like the 1700s of BC. But yeah, it's like
a long time ago.
many moons. And for context, at this time, I think the last of the mammoths were going extinct. That's how long ago this was. And there were these letters, and they were letters of distaste for people who had entered into contracts to purchase copper from a trader, and he was promising high level copper. I think this guy had done the North African trade route as far west as Morocco, and on he's promising high level copper, and then the purchaser would send a representative to pick up the copper, and then the trader would create a negative communication experience for the person who's coming. And you have to keep in mind too, power structures play into this. Mm-hmm. The person who's being sent is probably a slave, or at the very least, not.
They're in no position of authority.
Exactly. So they're not used to making calls, and they're literally going to pick something up. And so this man is sort of taking advantage of a power structure and saying, and creating a very negative communication experience in which he's belittling the person who's coming to pick it up, and says, that's what I have, take it or leave it. And so it's like, boy, we've heard that. That's a phrase that just exists all through human history, I'm guessing. At least,
it ain't nothing new. At the very least, as your evidence, it's nothing new. Take it or leave it. When you feel like you could take advantage of that person.
Absolutely. And then more, and you go forward a little bit to like Egypt. They used to skew the weights, so that you're not getting an accurate scale readout for how much grain.
Putting on the scale. Trading with inaccurate weights. Yeah, that was a real big thing. That's criminal activity. People back in the day, because again, it was that was a serious matter. Grain, barley, like eating and stuff like that. That's how people lived, man. So that's wild, man. Dude was scamming before Christ. Boy, ain't that something.
And real quick too, and just for a little bit of context for more complicated fraud, insurance fraud. I think that was happening even still about two three
Oh
hundred
yeah.
years. Oh yeah, like you get like you sink your own ship.
Mm-hmm.
You take insurance on the ship, and then if you could, show the hull or the keel or something like that, then you'd, get money back on your original insurance investment. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, this is nothing new. And so, I think when people experience heavy scams today, and I have a pretty chilling story. If we have some time, I'd love to share about a modern day scam.
Yeah, no, definitely. But to get back on that, the subject of that, unfortunately, again, we can not going to go too deep on this because it's not the topic of consider your mind. But a lot of the big insurance companies that we know of, started insuring slave ships. So in
Mm-hmm.
terms of loss of cargo, loss of life,
Right.
and there's a couple movies about it. I think one of them was Bell. It was a while ago. It was just a few years ago. This movie called Bell, Belle, and it was dealing with just that in England. Somebody was trying to, again, they literally capsized or killed whatever on the boat, all the people, and they were trying to get the insurance money from it. Those were just losses that the insurance companies were insuring. So there's a lot of history with that. There's a lot of very dark history, a lot of with scamming. And again, that's a topic for another day. But again, we haven't enough. We don't have to go too far. Like I said, that just happened to my buddy. I was involved in an MLM, which a lot of people consider a scam. And then I think again we spoke briefly about some experience that you even had personally when I brought it up, which gave us the idea for the show. Like, hey, if I've experienced this, I got a buddy that's experienced this. Let's bring it up, man.
So scams tend to evolve with the times and what we have available to us. And there are websites out there that are um, sort of grabbing freely available data and creating profiles without consent. And because the data is freely available, they're sort of weaseling through any kind of Federal Trade Commission or other things that might show up through like a state attorney general's office. And so one of those things is it's like a people search websites. And so
Yep.
I knew this guy, and he told me this story. This is wild. He says he was hanging out. He's with his wife, and the telephone rings. It's just a random Saturday or Sunday morning, and it was his uncle, and his uncle called him and said, "Hey, how are you doing? Are you okay?" And again, for context, this guy, he didn't talk. He didn't talk to his uncle all that often. He sort of identified having maybe seen him once in the last couple years and maybe talked to him a couple times a year. And so this sudden call where it's like this really, kind of intense check-in. He was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he says, "Oh, well, how are you healing?" And he's like, I'm fine. What's going on?" And then said the very next thing he heard a pause, and then his uncle said, "Oh my God, I've been scammed." And he said, "All right, well, uh, I gotta go." And the phone hangs up, and so he just sort of leaves him hanging like that. And then
Mm,
see, so he talks to him about maybe 2 hours later, and the story comes out, and it turns out that a person contacted this guy's uncle, claiming to be this person, and saying that he had been in a car accident, um, in this is where it gets wild, in a specific area where this person used to live. And it so happens that this area is a little bit removed from a lot of the more metropolitan the metropolitan areas in that sort of geographic location. And so, it had just enough plausibility to it. It had just enough
yep.
sophistication for it to be true, right? And apparently the person had called and was frantic and was sort of crying on the phone, and really kind of playing it up and saying, "I've been in a car accident and I'm going to get sued," and that someone got hurt, and so long story short, the uncle ended up sending $15,000. Yeah,
Man,
and
serious
y-
money.
yeah. And now, interestingly enough, these folks clear, and it's if it's happened to you, you're rarely the first target.
Straight up. Absolutely. It's like a roach, they say. You see one? No, there's more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He got lucky. I think that this particular group was being investigated.
Oh,
But
okay.
what, yeah, so, and I think some of the money was returned. And so there's sort of a, kind of a medium ending. But what's so interesting was the sophistication around the story. It
Mhm.
was, I mean, it was like chef's kiss on the details. It showed a distinct intelligence in choosing just how to present it, and the area that was chosen, and the relationship was just distance enough but not quite, and it was like you wonder if part of it was random luck, or if they really maybe got cased a little bit. And so the uncle, my friend, he talked to his uncle, and he said, yeah, he was mostly kind of feeling shame, mostly kind of feeling embarrassed.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and so it kind of takes me to like, well, how do we recover from this? And it's like, I get the feeling there's a couple things, and off the top of my head, I want to say, it starts with kind of an acceptance that something has happened. It's like
Yeah.
an acceptance of the real world. And this doesn't mean that the person who's been scammed is stupid. It is not an indictment on that person's level of intelligence, because, like we said, they've been scamming dudes almost 2,000 years
Yeah,
before Christ.
there you go. It ain't just you. Not at all.
Right.
Nothing new.
And you know what's interesting too, sideline to that, if we go back even further, but probably extreme ancient times when we were sitting around campfires and trying to hunt larger game, we had an intrinsic distaste for someone who was there to reap the benefit but was not present to assist in the takedown.
That's real talk right there. What you just said
Yeah.
is a mouthful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
We don't like,
we're
'cause again, that's like a person scamming us. They're getting over on us. We don't like to get played, man. There's something deep within us.
yes. Yes. I think modern days, I think we can recover a little easier, because of sort of the way society is sort of set up, but it doesn't mean everybody can. And
Hmm.
but there's a few things that people can do in general. Is I think we start focusing on what can be done.
Mm.
Like what can I? Well, I can accept that there is a real world out there, and as a certain recording artist said, we go hard on Earth. And
Hmm.
we gotta remember that we gotta first of all forgive ourselves, like, because these things happen. They do
Yeah.
happen, and to deny it is that's just not accurate. And most importantly is we got to avoid judgment, because it's that judgment, it's that judgment that will poison us,
It's like the
to a
nail in the coffin. It puts the
it
nail in the
is.
coffin to keep you buried and not moving forward. Stay you right there. And so you're that guy complaining, man, I guess, well, your life, my life would have been better if I just never did it. And you never move forward. Still complaining about the people that got over on you.
Right. Yeah, and who knows the messaging that people are receiving from those around them, like, how could you let yourself get scammed like that? And it's like,
Buddy,
oh my God, may as well just shove a knife at me. That's rough.
man.
you know
Yeah. No, you ain't lying. Again, when you hit the nail on the head when you said that validation, that invalidation from other people. When people all of a sudden you've done this, da da da, and then they tear you down, they invalidate it like it don't matter. Or at worst, you did the wrong thing. Man,
yeah,
that
yeah.
that's a lot, man. So, you know what? Thank you so much for coming back on the show, man. This was great. I'm so glad we got to touch on this topic again. To really expound on it. I think this episode is really going to help some people. Getting kind of vulnerable here, about my own personal, kind of mistakes and missteps. And so we're and again, stories from yourself about those that you know that have made mistakes, missteps, got scammed, got, done wrong, got one over on them. Um, hey man, just like everything else, we're going through it with you. But there is, again, it's always a dynamic. We're not staying there. We're going through it. There is another side to this. And again, I love what you said. It starts with acknowledging what happened, that whole grieving thing that you said. Like, you got to grieve the loss. Don't just ignore it. The shame tells you to ignore it, not to say anything, not to tell anybody, just to internalize it, internalize that stress. And we know what that does, that has deleterious effects on our health. So, hey guys, for all those that are going through it, make sure you keep going. And like, what would you say? We go hard on this earth, right?
We do go hard on earth. And if you're going to fall, try and fall forward.
I like it. You know what? I don't think there's a better way to wrap that up. If you're going to fall, try and fall forward, people. Thank you so much, Mr. James Geri, for coming on the show again. We really do appreciate you, friend and fam of the show right now, That's, so we appreciate that. And let people know where they can get in contact with you, more information on you. Because I say, hey, man, you're about to be out here. You're about to be licensed and all that. So.
Indeed. You can check out my websites, therapyjg.com. And also, you put my name in, it'll show up on Google. So I'm pretty accessible.
Nice. Yeah, man. James Geri with a G, therapyjg.com. Again, thank you so much, Mr. James, for coming on the show again. And can't wait to have you back. And for all of you out there listening, again, thank you all so much for listening. We hope you got something out of this show, because I know I sure did. And until next week, peace.